Reformed Church.
You know, when we give, we're not giving to get anything from God. There's no blessing that comes along from God in repayment for our gifts. You know, we believe in Jesus, and we believe in what Jesus has done so that we can receive from God. You know, again, when Christians say that Jesus is the only way to receive from God, they will say that, but then, you know, giving becomes a time of us receiving blessing from God, and ultimately, then our giving, right? Then what we're saying is that our giving is also another way to receive from God, and that's not the way it works, right? We give just free will. You know, giving to church is great because, you know what, to be quite honest, if we didn't have people that gave, this building would not be here right now, right? It's because of what people give that we can, you know, expand this ministry and that we can keep the lights on and all that stuff. But, you know, it's free will, though. It's free will. We give because, you know, we are happy over the gospel that we're receiving. We receive the gospel with joy, and therefore we give. But it's not to get anything from God, because again, if we're giving to get something from God, then we're just receiving by our works again, right? We're back in the Old Testament now, receiving by our works. And I just want to, you know, mention this as well, that people will point out, even when it comes to tithing, that, oh, you know, tithing though isn't just an Old Testament thing. Tithing is a New Covenant thing, because Abraham, who was a New Covenant guy, man of faith, Abraham tithed as well. But, you know, there's so much I can go into with that, because tithing is actually just symbolic. Just like burnt offerings, just like circumcision, tithing is just symbolic of Jesus, like any of those other things. But I just do want to point out to people that would try to use well, tithing was even before the law, though. First of all, circumcision was also before the law, too. Burnt offerings, Noah, before the law, offered burnt offerings, and we don't do that anymore. Why? Because we realize that they're symbolic of Jesus, right? That's why you don't come in here. There's not an altar of burnt offering here. We're not burning calves or anything on an altar, because we realize they're symbolic of Jesus. Tithing, circumcision, all those things are the same thing. And the cherry on top with this, if you read Genesis 14 for yourself, Abraham is recorded as tithing in Genesis 14. On one hand, that is symbolic of Jesus. On the other hand, though, it's also worth noting that here's the sequence of events that happen. He meets a man named Melchizedek, who's a symbol of Jesus. Melchizedek brings him bread and wine. The Bible doesn't necessarily say why he does that, but it just does record that Melchizedek gives Abraham, or brings out, bread and wine. And then Melchizedek blesses Abraham by the God Most High. So there's the bread and the wine, then there is the blessing from Melchizedek, and then after that, it says, and Abraham gave him a tithe of all. Again, first of all, tithing is symbolic. But even despite the fact that it was practiced, even as a symbol there, notice that the blessing came before the tithe that was ever given. But the blessing came after the bread and the wine was given. Melchizedek, as a symbol of Jesus, our high priest, gave bread and wine. Then the blessing followed the bread and the wine. And then the tithe was given after Abraham was already blessed. So people, I've heard so many people say, oh, there's a secret to tithing, though. It's just a principle. It's not receiving by works. It's just a principle. When you tithe, you know, it enacts something, and there will be a blessing that you don't have room enough to receive. All that is Old Testament type stuff. And even Abraham, when he practiced the symbol of tithing before the law was ever given, he wasn't blessed because of his tithe. And most people will quote that and say that even Abraham was blessed because of his tithe, or even Jacob was blessed because of his tithe. But if you notice, Abraham saw the bread and the wine first, and then was tithe, and then was blessed after that, showing we're blessed because of the body and blood of Jesus. We're not blessed because of our tithe. We're not blessed because of our giving. It's the body and the blood of Jesus that was given for us by our high priest, our greater Melchizedek. And therefore, we are blessed based off the bread and the wine. Just like anything, right? We're blessed because of what Jesus did. Abraham tithed after that, but he was already blessed. And why was he blessed? Because of the bread and the wine from his high priest. Same thing with Jacob. Jacob tithed as well, but God blessed him before he ever even promised God a tenth. And that's in Genesis. I'm not sure what chapter that is. But Jacob actually saw a vision of Jesus as a ladder, as his access to heaven. And after seeing a symbol of Jesus, then God blessed him. And then after he was already blessed, he promised God a tenth of all. And again, tithing is a symbol, just like burnt offering and circumcision anyway. But even when they did tithe as a symbol, they didn't receive anything from God after that. They were blessed before that based off the bread and the wine, the symbol of Jesus' sacrifice, based off the ladder that he saw. I would challenge you, read those chapters. You're going to have to look up the other one on your own time, the Jacob and his vision of the ladder. But Genesis chapter 14, read it for yourself and see if Abraham was blessed by his tithe. He wasn't. He was blessed first based off the bread and the wine. That's exactly how you're blessed as well. You're blessed off the bread and the wine. You're not blessed off your tithe. You're blessed off of what Jesus has done, because we could never do enough to to receive from God. And you know what? If you could be totally righteous of your own works, then yeah, you would receive a blessing from God that you didn't have room enough to receive. But obviously none of us can do that, and that's why we need Jesus. We need Jesus to receive in our finances. You need Jesus to receive in your body. You need Jesus to receive for anything. And just the same way you can be saved by your works, you can't be blessed by your works either. And giving is just a work if we're saying we're blessed by it, right? I understand people say, and I'm going to stop right here, I understand people say that it's just a show of trust in God. But that doesn't work. You weren't saved by a show of trust in God. You were saved by belief in Jesus, right? Did you have to do something to prove that you believed in Jesus before you got saved? Didn't, right? If you remember back, did anyone tell you that, oh, you need to believe in Jesus, but you also need to do something, an act, to show that you really believe in Jesus? No. Belief in Jesus was good enough. You believed in your heart, and therefore it came out of your mouth, because that's what happens, right, when something's abundantly in your heart. Out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks. You believed in your heart, and that was good enough. Faith in Jesus was good enough to get saved. By grace, through faith, you were saved. Not faith and then a show, a work to show your faith. And yet we will teach people that you are blessed by your tithe. And it's not a work. It's just a show of trust in God, really. So if I just trust in God, but I don't do the work of tithing, will I still be blessed? People will tell you no, right? Because it really is about the work. It's not really about just the trust in God. If you were receiving by the trust in God, you'd be able to receive from God just based off the trust, even without any giving present. And I advocate giving, but you're not blessed from God because of your giving, right? You did not have to do that when you got saved. There was no work required for you to implement first before, to prove your faith to God before you got saved, and there's no work that you need to do to be blessed from God when it comes to giving as well. Giving is just free will. Giving is not to get anything from God. It's just, hey, I want to give because I want to support the gospel.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this unpopular message to the world. If you'd like to support Reformed Church, you can do so at reforminus.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reforminus.com.